Welcome back to Punk Rock Theologian for another episode of Unapologetics, where we don't apologize for truth, but we learn how to represent our king well. This is actually episode 8, and if you haven't seen the first 7, I encourage you to go check some of that stuff out on the channel. And please note, we have not yet even approached the God of the Bible. We're simply testing whether whatever made the universe begin, whatever made you and I be here to be able to speak to each other, whether that is this blind, meaningless, pitiless indifference, as Richard Dawkins calls it, or an intelligent mind. And the simple basis for it is something we're all very familiar with, that's cause and effect. That's part of what led us last month to seeing an uncaused cause. Something had to start this whole chain reaction that led to here, but so much more than just some force. There has to be some manner of intelligence in this, because physical structures and intentional design don't build themselves. Hebrews 3:4 explains it really simply. Every house is built by someone, but God is the builder of everything. Take that example actually literally. I didn't build my house, but somebody did. It's not like it just materialized and popped into existence. Nobody thinks that about any house on the planet. We know that they were built by someone, because something doesn't come from nothing. I feel like we should all be able to get that. So now come with me on a couple little thought exercises. Imagine you walk into a cave out in the middle of the woods and you find this painting on the wall of a buffalo with spears in it. Now, you probably have no idea who painted it, but there is no part of you for anybody in the world that thinks it just happened. Maybe millions of years of wind and rain created this amazing design that kind of looks like a buffalo with spears. Nobody thinks that. We know that for that painting to be there, well, clearly I'm not the first person to be in this cave, and someone else did that. Let's ratchet up the complexity a bit with a famous example from William Paley, a philosopher back in 1802, put out this idea. If you come across a mechanical pocket watch, once again, you are never going to imagine that this just happened to come together. Apparently it was some rocks, then maybe some erosion made this come together, and these amazing little complex gears that keep perfect time. No, obviously there's a watchmaker behind this. Just give you one more. How about a book? If you're walking through the woods and find a 500-page novel laying in a trail, does anybody out there go, oh, well, paper comes from trees, and this is probably just an old tree that decomposed and just so happened to come out with these marks on it that are so curious? Every single one of us would call that person a lunatic, because you're not going to get sentences and paragraphs and punctuation and spelling and syntax and maybe a narrative without an author. We get this. And so, whether you've ever connected these dots this way or not, what we all intuitively understand is that information always originates from intelligence. This is precisely why Psalm 19 starts out by saying, the heavens proclaim the glory of God, the skies display his craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak, and night after night they make him known. The world has been telling us forever that God is there. And actually, we can see it better now than we ever did before. Back when William Paley made his whole pocket watch illustration, that was one of the most complex things he could imagine. But we now know that the world is way more intricate than those kind of little gears. And I'm not talking about a smartphone or anything we humans have built. I want to look at DNA. The DNA in every single cell of every living organism uses a 4-letter chemical alphabet, A, C, T, and G, that stand for things I don't remember. A single strand of human DNA contains 6.4 billion letters in a very precise, unique to you order. That's an incredibly detailed, incredibly intricate thing that is required for you to exist. Now, I've never seen 6.4 billion letters, and neither of you. So to help us wrap our minds around it, if you were to print all of that out, a single strand of DNA represents as much text as in over 2,000 Bibles printed. That's not even a bookshelf of information. That's a library of information in every single cell of your body, which, by the way, there's roughly 30 trillion of those, and every single one has this microscopic library of what makes you you. This is why Bill Gates, who might not be the top of the technology game anymore, but I think we can at least acknowledge he knows a thing or two about software, said that DNA is like a computer program, but far, far more advanced than any software ever created. Which really isn't new information. Jeremiah 10:12 said, the Lord made the earth by his power, and he preserves it by his wisdom. With his own understanding, he stretched out the heavens. This is information, understanding, intelligence. That's what we see in DNA. It is unexplainable as randomness. In the 1800s, top scientists like Charles Darwin believed that a cell was just a blob of goo. whereas modern science has revealed this incredible digital instruction manual that is longer than an entire Encyclopedia Britannica, if you're old enough to remember what those are. Scientific evidence strengthens our belief in an intelligent designer. More than that, it demonstrates that you are not a cosmic accident or some random chemical soup. The complexity inside your cells demonstrates intentionality, as David expressed it in Psalm 139, starting in verse 13. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Which leads to a question. If code requires a coder, and we get that, then why does culture claim that science has disproved God when science is showing us things like DNA? This really matters because so many believers feel like they can't even engage in a conversation when someone says something like that unless they hold a PhD in astrophysics or molecular biology or something. Unless we're the absolute scientific expert, we feel like the experts have proven us wrong. A strict materialist is literally claiming that the entire cosmos, the laws of physics, and 2,000 plus Bibles worth of cellular code all popped into existence out of absolute nothingness by complete accident. That takes an incredible leap of blind faith, far more than anything the Bible has ever expected of any of us. Christianity actually expects us to use our brain, to examine the evidence, and follow where it leads. This is an absurdly old idea, actually. We find it in the book of Job, which scholars agree is most likely the oldest book in the Bible, written well before Genesis was. And in Job 12, starting at verse 7, it says, but ask the animals, and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, or let the fish in the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every creature, and the breath of all mankind. The idea is that nature and the world around us reveals that God is there. It shows us that all of this can't come from absolute nothingness or from a pure accident. And you don't even have to believe me. Take the testimony of Dr. Anthony Flew. He was one of the most prominent atheists of the last century, a brilliant philosopher whose books were used in school curriculums for like 50 plus years. This guy's life motto was a quote from Plato's Socrates that says, follow the evidence wherever it leads. And to his credit, he did. Because in 2004, at the age of 81, definitely old enough to be set in his ways, he shocked the intellectual world by publicly abandoning atheism based actually on the evidence of DNA and the complexity of microbiology as we now know it. In his own words, he said, I now believe there is a God. I now think it, the evidence, does point to a creative intelligence almost entirely because of the DNA investigation. What I think the DNA material has done is that it has shown by the almost unbelievable complexity of the arrangements which are needed to produce life that intelligence must have been involved. Someone who was utterly convinced that there was no God, no need for a God, had his entire worldview turned upside down in his 80s because of the extraordinary complexity of intelligently designed information that exists before our very eyes, if you have the right tools to look for it, in human DNA, in what we all carry around in every single cell of our bodies. And so the thing to remember is that real science and true faith both observe the exact same reality. And truth has nothing to fear from data. Science can never threaten faith that is grounded in truth. So for this month, your ambassador assignment, if you will, is simply to notice design all around you. It's everywhere. It's the apps on your phone, it's the communication, it's the things you're using to see this video, it's street signs, it's barcodes. Information is all around us, and every single bit of it came from some intelligence behind it. And so then, if you find yourself in a conversation with somebody who claims that science has disproved God, don't get defensive and don't start preaching at them. Just ask a question. Do you believe that structured, organized information can exist without someone to write that? Tell them about the 2,000 Bibles worth of digital code that exists within their own bodies. And always remember, we're not here to win debates. We're not here to try to make the other person look stupid. Our job is to help people see Jesus clearly. And this is one of the big obstacles in our day and age that gets in the way. And your job as the ambassador is to clear the path, speak the truth, and trust the Spirit.